Known for its lush tropical haven, warm water beaches and surf spots, and admirable culture, Hawaii is one of the most popular places to travel with about 3 million international visitors sightseeing the Aloha State. However, underneath the glamour of this prime vacation destination, tourists often don't know the true culture and dark history of Hawaii. So, let's rewind to the late 18th century. Up until this point, the Kingdom of Hawaii was an independent, sovereign people. Although they had been constituted of a variety of smaller kingdoms due to the different islands, it's estimated that the Hawaiian people had been on those islands since about 1000 to 1200 AD. Since 1778, the Hawaiian Islands had seen multiple attempts from European missionaries to convert the people of Hawaii to European ideals and religion. In 1810, their most respected king, King Kamehameha I, had united all 8 major islands. After the unification of the Kingdom of Hawaii, the state was recognized by both Europe and the United States as a legitimate political body. In the beginning of the 19th century, the agricultural advantages of Hawaii's environment became increasingly enticing to American agricultural powerhouses, such as one of America's most favorite pineapple brands, Dole. Sanford Dole, the cousin of James Dole, the founder of modern-day Dole Food Company, led the coup to dethrone Hawaii's last queen. After placing Queen Lili'uokalani under illegal house arrest at the Iolani Palace in Honolulu, Sanford Dole and the United States government illegally annexed Hawaii through the New Lands Resolution. Most of Hawaii's people heavily disagreed with the actions of the United States government, taking to the streets to protest. However, U.S. military power was much too strong, and the Hawaiian people were forced to subject to Sanford Dole, their new unelected governor, and their new ruler, the tyrannical United States. Today, Hawaii faces a large mountain of struggle. Hawaii is more than a vacation. It's a home for people of rich cultural connection to the water, land, and spirit of the islands. However, the state faces a large variety of issues, such as pollution, climate change, and cultural death, as well as a near impossible cost of living. However, the spirit of Hawaii finds ways to prevail. When analyzing discussion within Hawaii and local issues, there are 3 essential points. First, the principles of political posters. Second, the main struggles of the Hawaiian locals. And third, the unique elements of Hawaii-specific protest posters. Throughout my analysis of the protests within Hawaii, signage seems to be the most prominent source of discourse outside of social media. The first principle is that the poster needs to be attention-grabbing. If the poster isn't inciting intrigue for the reader, it will not succeed. Second is that it must be clear and visually appealing. By this, I mean that they must consistently have one main phrase that is easy to understand and read. Lastly, political posters must be easily understood by the masses. When one crafts a poster, they want someone passing by to know what they are protesting without needing additional context on the sign. Now for the fun part. When reviewing Hawaii-specific protests in regards to the issues discussed in 3 essential struggles of Hawaii previously, there were 3 patterns that I quickly realized. The first is that Hawaiian protest signs match the principles of posters in which there is always a clear claim. The second interesting pattern is that posters will always have a cultural connection. This can lead to some discrepancies in regard to the last principle of political posters, i.e. not requiring additional context, but we'll discuss that in a moment. The final pattern I gathered was adherent to the second political poster principle of being simply overall interesting and stylistically attractive. The first protest sign we will analyze is in disagreement of a massive telescope that was to be built on Mauna Kea, the most holy and respected dormant volcano of the Hawaiian Islands. It was said to be home to the ancient Hawaiian gods. Even though a majority of Hawaiian natives no longer believe in the ancient religions, they still believe that the volcano and its surrounding areas are sacred and that the land shouldn't be harmed as to not disturb wildlife and plants. Let's look at this poster a little more closely. Using our guide of the 3 main aspects of Hawaii protest signs, we can analyze that a clear one-statement claim is made. We are here to protect Mauna Kea. The protester has made an excellent clear claim that quickly shares the purpose. The second aspect is the cultural element. In this poster, there are 2 cultural ties. The first is the bird symbols that surround the dormant volcano sketch. You should be able to tell that the bird illustration is distinct from traditional Western depictions. This is because the style of bird here is exactly how ancient native Hawaiian rock drawings were completed of birds. Similarly, the spiral with the O of protect also symbolizes the Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander beliefs of new life, growth, strength, and peace. Essentially, the eternal movement of the earth. I believe that cultural elements are incredibly important to Hawaiian movements because it marks the efforts in preserving culture that is at risk of extinction. The final aspect is that of stylistic choices. The color scheme here is attractive, the drawings are neat, and the text is easily legible. The poster is a great example of how anti-climate change protests are supported by signage. Moving on from preservation efforts, let's take a glance at the low wages and high cost of living issue. One of Hawaii's most prominent hotels is the Hilton on Oahu. It's estimated that this hotel makes an average of $82,100,000 a year. With profits this large, you would think that the workers would be rightfully compensated. However, like most corporations in the United States, there are unions that exist because the pay isn't substantial. Living in Hawaii is expensive, so you'd expect your high-earning employer to help share the wealth so you and your family can be secure. When that expectation wasn't met, Hilton employees stopped working and began to protest for fair wages. If we look at these two posters specifically, we can first acknowledge the clear claim. The poster on the left states, "On strike at Hilton Hawaiian Village." The one on the right states, "One job should be enough." Both posters do well to have a clear-cut claim. As for cultural ties, it does take a little more effort to understand. The logo at the bottom of the first poster portrays the organization that is aiding the employees in their union. If we look at the logo more closely, it hosts the state outline and, most importantly, the word local. The term local is indeed a cultural tie because there is a deep anti-colonial history behind it. The definition molds to whoever you ask, but most natives will agree that it's not whether you went to school in Hawaii or if you go to the beach or visit every year with your family. Instead, it describes someone that lives on Hawaii and understands and interacts with the culture and Native Hawaiian people fully and ethically. Therefore, when we understand the cultural impact of the term local, it's meant to portray that those who have been on Hawaii their whole lives are struggling and shouldn't have to. As for the final element of stylistic choice, the text is loud and bold, especially when accompanied by red backgrounds that create a sense of urgency. While simple, these two posters perfectly portray how signage is impactful to wage fairness efforts. Hawaii averages about 9 to 10 million visitors each year. Maui is one of the more prominent Hawaiian islands that gets visited the most. So, it was devastating for both locals and the general public when the Lahaina wildfires occurred. It's estimated that the fire caused over $5.6 billion in damages and destroyed over 2,200 structures, including homes, businesses, churches, and whole communities. There was also an estimated number of over 100 lives lost. While the fires were still roaring and with dead bodies still in the water, a tourist snorkeling company still held its tours in the midst of such devastating tragedies for the Hawaiian communities that the tourists had used and visited. This takes us to our final topic and posters to explore: tensions between tourists and locals. Locals during the time of the fire were enraged with the reactions of outsiders immediately after the fires. Rich investors and realtors outside of Maui were exposed for reaching out to multiple local businesses and homeowners, calling families who had just lost everything to buy their land. In response, locals began to protest with signs such as portrayed here. If we zoom in on the white signs at the bottom, we can see once again amazing, clear claims that demand support for Lahaina, and that it's far too early for tourists to flood Maui after such a tragic event. As for cultural elements, it's important to the protesters that the correct usage of Hawaiian language is preserved through terms like kahoko, which is the bars above the vowels indicating a longer sound. It's crucial for accurate pronunciation of Hawaiian language as to preserve culture that is getting closer to extinction. The leaves that surround the text are reminiscent of tea leaf leis that are symbols of protection, blessings, and luck. By utilizing cultural influences, the Hawaiian culture that was destroyed in the wildfires can still be preserved. If we look for stylistic choices, the signs are plain but clear. The text is large so that individuals driving alongside the roads can see. My analysis of Hawaiian political protest signs has shown how they rely on cohesiveness and intermixing text and visuals in advocating for justice and preserving cultural identity. Each sign examined demonstrates the unique ability of Hawaiian activists to craft messages that blend clear, urgent claims with deeply rooted cultural elements and stylistic choices that capture attention. Whether addressing the sacredness of Mauna Kea, advocating for fair wages, or responding to the aftermath of the Lahaina wildfires, These signs exemplify the power of visual communication in political movements. While there are some discrepancies, such as some Hawaiian protest signs requiring existing knowledge of Hawaiian culture, I would argue that those who don't understand needing to look deeper into Hawaiian culture serves the whole purpose of these protests exceptionally. By focusing on political signs, we see how Hawaiian protests extend beyond words to create visually compelling and culturally significant calls to action.